After Han Li, who was in the mid-nascent soul stage, left Kunwu Mountain, he successfully refined the Peeing Pill and the 5 devils of the same heart. Now, Han Li's strength had greatly increased. He felt that, as long as he didn't encounter a large group of late nascent soul cultivators attacking him, or run into a terrifying existence on the level of sacred ancestor Yuan Sha, he was powerful enough to roam the mortal realm and protect himself. After all, with the help of the 5 devils and the humanoid puppet, both his cultivation level and divine abilities, compared to before he entered Kunwu Mountain, were far stronger. Even against multiple late nascent soul stage cultivators, he wouldn't be at a disadvantage, and since so many years had passed, he estimated that the matter concerning Kunwu Mountain should have died down by now. Therefore, without any hesitation, he took advantage of the weather and left the mountain, flying straight towards North Sea Island. A full half-month later, nearby cultivators only then occasionally discovered that the white mist on Snow Lotus Mountain had completely dispersed, and there was no one to be found. It looked as if it had been completely abandoned. Those cultivator factions, aside from their astonishment, naturally started fighting over the ownership of this now vacant spirit land, once again stirring up a storm of conflict. North Sea Ice Island is actually on the mainland of the Jian'ai Great Territory, just a peninsula. It's surrounded by the sea on 3 sides, with one side connected to the mainland, separated from Shuang Prefecture by only a single state. Actually, the so-called surrounded by the sea on 3 sides wide, and at the northernmost part of this island, a city was built. The huge ice city is what's known as the North Goose Lethargy Palace, the number 1 sect of the North. To be honest, in terms of the sect's power, the Lethargy Palace is by no means inferior to the Great Jin's 10 great righteous and demonic sects, but because North Underworld Island is too remote, in the Great Jin cultivation world, most of the major sects don't even recognize this palace as being part of the Great Jin. They consider it a barbaric land and an overseas cultivation sect. That is why it was excluded from the Great Jin's major sect rankings. But in the Great Jin's vast and sparsely populated northern states, the reputation of the North Goose Lethargy Palace is perhaps only greater than the Taiyi sect and the Heavenly Demon sect, and certainly not beneath them. It is the true number 1 sect of the North. In these states, the Lethargy Palace is also known as the North Immortal Palace. The number of rogue cultivators and cultivators from prominent families who wish to join is countless. When the Lethargy Palace recruits disciples, it also has a division between the Inner and Outer Palace. Inner Palace disciples are only recruited from those who live on North Underworld Island, from a few large cultivator families. Outer Palace disciples, however, are from outside North Underworld Island, selected from smaller families and rogue cultivators. Of course, if an Outer Palace disciple's aptitude is truly astounding, or if they perform some great service, they also have a chance to be transferred to become an Inner Palace disciple. Putting aside the Inner Palace disciples, if someone believes their aptitude is lacking, but still wants to enter the Outer Palace, they must cross the Lethargy Palaces, surrounding 100,000 li wide extremely cold land on foot. After stepping into this range, due to a prohibition, low-level cultivators are unable to fly. They can only rely on their own cultivation and divine abilities to resist the never-ending ice, snow, and extreme cold. As long as one can walk from this area to the Lethargy Palace, they will also be accepted by the Lethargy Palace and become an Outer Palace disciple. After all, no matter whether by relying on cultivation and magic tools, or simply trying to pass through this place, all of it shows that they still have some merit. It's just that among them, those who can succeed are naturally few. Many cultivators perish directly within it, but for the sake of their future path of cultivation, like low-level cultivators throwing themselves into it like moths to a flame, there are still a great many every year. On this day, in a region tens of thousands of miles away from Zhejiang, there were another dozen or so figures draped in various fur cloaks, their bodies flickering with spiritual light, braving the howling wind and snow that assailed them, moving forward with difficulty, step by step. In this kind of weather, they had been walking for a full half a month. A few among them already had pale faces, and their steps were unsteady, but not a single one dared to stop for even a moment. After all, it was impossible to meditate and recover here. They could only rely on the meager food in their hands and the magical power in their bodies to desperately hold on. But one person's face was especially grim, and his breathing seemed somewhat unsteady. After a while, he suddenly gritted his teeth and from within his robes took out a medicine bottle, pouring a crimson pill into his mouth. His originally bluish face instantly regained some color. Gu Dao, How many of your fire sheep pills do you have left? If you take them so frequently, there's no way you'll make it to Zhejiang. The hailstone area ahead is several times more difficult to cross than this. At the front of the group, a certain middle-aged man, enveloped in a deep yellow glow, spoke faintly without turning his head, as if he knew the situation behind him like the back of his hand. Don't worry, Senior Guo. I still have a spare bottle. It's enough to get through this region. The cultivator who took the pill, a young man in his 20s, quickly replied, seeming somewhat fearful of the middle-aged man. That's good. I don't want to bring someone along who has absolutely no hope of getting through. The middle-aged man seemed, by the young man's answer, quite satisfied. The passport flashed with light as he continued to stride forward. The blizzard that filled the sky seemed to have little effect on him. When the other people saw this, they hurriedly followed. It seemed that only by staying close to this person did they have any hope of reaching Zhejiang. But after the middle-aged man had taken a few steps, he suddenly let out a soft sound of surprise. He stopped in his tracks. Then, he looked up at the sky in astonishment. The others hurriedly followed his gaze. Only then did they discover that amidst the vast, white snowstorm, a faint, light green figure had appeared at some point. It was suspended in midair, and strangely, within a 30 to 40 jong radius around this person, all the wind and snow were being blocked by an invisible force. It was completely unable to enter. It was because of this anomaly that the middle-aged man had spotted the person in the sky. Everyone's hearts jumped in shock. Immediately, their faces turned pale. To ignore the flight restriction in this area seemed to be something even an ordinary cultivator couldn't do. Could this person be a legendary nascent soul cultivator? Or perhaps a high-ranking cultivator from Zhejiang? But their robes didn't seem to match. For a moment, they all looked at each other, their hearts filled with apprehension. Are you rogue cultivators trying to enter the sect of Zhejiang? The figure, shrouded in a faint light, suddenly spoke. Judging by the voice, they didn't seem to be very old. Although the middle-aged man's cultivation level wasn't high, he was someone who had seen his share of the world. Being questioned by this mysterious figure, he instantly snapped back to his senses. He immediately bowed in respect. This junior, he replied hurriedly, Gu Tianchi, is officially one of the trial takers. Senior, do you have any instructions? As the middle-aged man spoke, his face was filled with reverence. You do have some ability, but it's nothing much. This place seems a bit strange. Even I am a little unsure of the way forward, and yet, you are able to proceed with such certainty. You must have some artifact guiding you, right? The blue-robed figure said unhurriedly, as if it were just a casual question. Hearing the blue-robed figure say this, the middle-aged man's expression immediately relaxed, but not daring to be neglectful in the slightest, he immediately replied, It seems this is Senior's first time on Biming Island, which is why you are unaware of this matter. On Biming Island, other areas are fine, but this region is already within the range of the Great Formation near Shaoji Palace. This Great Formation uses a famous treasure from the cultivation world, the Saintly Tower Stone, as its core. It can randomly skew a cultivator's spiritual sense away from the actual direction. For someone who is unaware, if they proceed according to the direction of their spiritual sense, I'm afraid they would never be able to find where Shaoji Palace is. As for this junior and the others, we were on Biming Island beforehand, and bought a directional plate from the market at the entrance. As long as we follow the direction indicated by this artifact, we won't get lost. The directional plate. The blue figure seemed to straighten up. It's this item. Although it's not a particularly rare artifact, one must have a clean background and a guarantor in order to buy this item from the Shaoji Palace shops. Moreover, only 30 are sold each year, and after a year, the artifact's effect will disappear on its own. This junior, just to be on the safe side, went ahead and bought 2. This one is a gift for you, Senior. I hope Senior will accept it. The middle-aged man's eyes shifted slightly, and with a sudden shake of his embroidered robe, a pale yellow circular plate slid out. He held it up with both hands. The blue-robed figure stroked his chin and chuckled. He then unceremoniously reached down and grabbed a flash of yellow light. The electric rock disc was shot right into his hand. The youthful figure was, of course, the one who had traveled for over half a month, Han Li, who had finally arrived at the northern underworld Ice Island. He originally thought that, with his abilities, he could easily pass through this restricted, still airspace, and directly reach Zhejiang's location. But he never expected that after flying into this area, his divine sense would frequently fail him, making it temporarily impossible to find Zhejiang's location. This startled him, and at the same time, made him a bit frustrated, because he was here to find someone. Otherwise, with his abilities, it wouldn't have been impossible to forcibly break this restriction. Just as Han Li was thinking of a countermeasure, he happened to run into the group of people before him. Are these people your companions? After examining the round disc in his hand, Han Li put it away with a flash of clear light. His gaze swept over the few people behind the man, asking a question that somewhat surprised Gu Tianchi. These fellow cultivators are people this junior, met not long ago, because we all want to become disciples of Z. Jigong, we decided to travel together. Why, is something wrong? Gu Tianchi was startled and became a little uneasy. It's not that something is wrong, it's just that one of them is wrong. Han Li stared at a young, beautiful female cultivator below and said with a cold smile, "What?" Gu Tianchi was still completely bewildered. "A demon is mixed in among you. Wouldn't you say that's wrong?" Han Li said faintly with a curl of his lips. "A demon." Upon hearing this, Gu Tianchi's expression changed drastically. He hurriedly looked towards that female cultivator. The other few cultivators were also startled. They subconsciously hurried several steps away from the woman, their faces filled with shock. "Senior, you must be joking. This junior is a disciple of the Shuangjuning family. How could she be a concoction?" That young woman's eyes widened in shock, and by these words, she was startled. She hurriedly approached, and explained eagerly, "Senior Shire, did you make a mistake? Fellow Taoist Ning, indeed from the Ning family. I have seen her several times." The young man who had previously taken the medicinal pill, seeing the young female cultivator's pale and frightened expression, couldn't help but speak up for her. The others also couldn't help but show their confusion. But Han Li just snorted lightly, as if he hadn't heard. "A mere spirit division cultivator dares to try and deceive me. Get out here." As soon as he spoke, Han Li made a grabbing motion in the air with one hand. Instantly, a spiritual light flashed above the young woman's head, and a large, green hand materialized. It then grabbed downwards. The woman, who originally had a wronged expression, trembled when she saw the large hand appear. The innocent look on her face vanished, replaced by a sinister and venomous expression. Then, her figure suddenly blurred, transforming into a streak of golden red light and shooting out. In an instant, she appeared in the air outside the tent, dozens of feet away. How could this be the cultivation of a Che condensation practitioner? Even a core formation cultivator wouldn't have such an astonishing escape speed. A cold sneer appeared on the corner of Han Li's mouth. He flicked his embroidered robe, and instantly, a yellow gleam shot out, vanishing in a flash. It then bizarrely appeared above the woman's head, transforming into a demon-subduing staff over 10 feet long. Under Han Li's spell, the treasure shook lightly. In an instant, its size grew wildly, creating massive tree-like phantoms, and smashed down fiercely. The young woman was terrified at the sight. Unable to dodge, she could only open her mouth. It spewed a cloud of black demonic energy, trying to resist for a moment. But with a loud bang, a yellow light flashed. The black energy was shattered in a single blow. It couldn't hold back the demon-subduing staff for even a second. The staff's phantom image slammed down on the crown of the woman's head. The young female cultivator let out a piercing scream. Her body immediately fell and collapsed. But at almost the same time, a faint black shadow shot out from the woman's body and fled. After circling once, it was about to burrow into the ground. Just then, a loud thunderclap sounded as a golden, electric net appeared out of nowhere above the black shadow, right over its head. Before it could even react, it descended like lightning. As it fell, a series of crackling sounds erupted. The black demonic shadow didn't even let out a whimper before it was completely annihilated by the golden light. This lightning-fast turn of events left everyone, including the middle-aged man, completely dumbfounded. Han Li raised his hand, recalling the demon-subduing staff. With a slight tremble, it shrank back to its original size, and flew back into his sleeve. After doing all this, Han Li casually tossed a small, light blue bottle, sending it toward Gu Tianchi. The middle-aged cultivator naturally caught it out of reflex. "The pills in this bottle might help you pass through here safely. Consider this my payment for your Donghua plate." After saying this with a blank expression, a brilliant cyan light immediately erupted from Han Li's body. He transformed into a blinding streak of light, and sped away. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the vast, snow-filled sky, leaving no trace. The middle-aged man then came to his senses, tightly clutching the small bottle in his hand. A look of joyous surprise appeared on his face. Nearby, gasps of astonishment came from the others. The young female cultivator was actually slowly waking up. It turned out that the earlier attack had not targeted the woman's body, and had caused it no harm. By now, Han Li was following the guidance of the plate in his hand. already heading straight for ZG Palace. But in his mind, he recalled, he just smiled slightly at what had happened. That young woman from just now had a wisp of divine sense from a high-level demon beast lurking inside her. Judging by its power, at the very least, it was a wisp of thought from a level 8 demon beast. This demon beast was rather cunning. Using some unknown demonic art, it had actually stealthily attached its spiritual sense inside that female cultivator's body, and the woman seemed completely unaware. If things had continued like this, when they truly walked out of this area, a careless cultivator from Zhigong might really have allowed this demon to use the woman's body as cover to sneak into Zhigong there, since he happened upon it. And furthermore, it was an easy task. Han Li naturally took action. He exterminated this wisp of the demon soul. This saved him the trouble of it, stirring up trouble on Baiming Island. However, for this demon beast to be so deliberate in its attempt to sneak in, could it have come for that cold water? After all, he had already made some inquiries. There was still no word from within Zhigong about the cold water being lost. After such a long time, it's impossible that Zhigong hasn't yet discovered that the cold water was missing. It seems that for some special reason, they've actually covered this matter up. He pondered this with some confusion. Meanwhile, his traveling light, under his control, was as fast as lightning. Before long, he flew into the sky, into a strange area where fist-sized hailstones were everywhere. These hailstones, mixed in with the wind and snow, were all crystal clear. They smashed against his protective shield, making low, thudding sounds. It was as if giant rocks were crashing into one another. But with Han Li's level of cultivation, he naturally paid these giant hailstones no mind. After flying for an hour, the hail before Han Li's eyes vanished. The wind and snow were completely gone. He had finally flown out of this region. Not far ahead, there appeared a mountainside ice city. From a distance, this city glittered with golden light, shining with multicolored rays under the sun. In addition, near it, there were faint white mists surrounding the city. It made the ice city seem like a celestial paradise. It truly didn't look like a construction of the mortal realm. Han Li's face showed a trace of surprise, but his gaze very quickly fell on the giant mountain behind the ice city. This mountain, for a mortal, would be considered extremely massive, appearing to be a full 10,000 zhang tall. But compared to the Kunwu mountain he had seen before, and other such behemoths, it naturally wasn't much. But what truly astonished Han Li was that this mountain was as straight as a giant sky-supporting pillar. The mountain's surface also shimmered crystallinely, covered in a layer of ice of unknown thickness. If not for the occasional spakes of green that dotted the mountain, Han Li would have suspected the entire mountain was made of solid ice. Although he had his bright-side pupils from such a distance, Han Li couldn't see the specific situation on the mountain clearly. He could only faintly make out, at the top of the ice mountain, a cluster of dazzlingly colored buildings. Looks like that's the so-called Little Extreme Palace. Han Li gazed at the distant ice city and giant mountain, but he did not immediately fly over, because in the glacial region between him and the ice city, what seemed ordinary actually concealed all sorts of invisible restrictions. Han Li, being proficient in formation arts, could clearly sense the terrifying power within them. If anyone were to rush in rashly, they would probably trigger its formidable power at once. And just as he walked out of the previous region, several streaks of light had already shot out from the ice city, flying swiftly toward his location. It was as if they had known of his arrival all along. Han Li raised an eyebrow. He suddenly remembered something, lowered his head and looked at the power disc in his hand. A look of realization appeared on his face. It seems this power disc not only has the function of guiding the way, but also allows Little Jigong's cultivators to know at all times the whereabouts of the cultivator holding this magic tool. Just as he was beginning to understand, a beam of light flashed. In the blink of an eye, a man and two women appeared before him. 3 cultivators from White Mountain. The man was a core formation stage cultivator, while the 2 women were at the foundation establishment stage. The man was about 30 years old, with a handsome face. When his gaze swept over Han Li, he showed a hint of alarm and hurriedly bowed respectfully, saying, "This junior, Sha Yuan, greets you. May I ask, Senior, what is your esteemed name, and what business brings you to our palace?" This North Pole Palace cultivator had seen Han Li flying out of the snowstorm from a distance, although he already knew the other party was no ordinary cultivator. When he confirmed that the person was indeed a nascent soul cultivator, and an unfamiliar one at the mid-stage at that, he couldn't help but feel a bit nervous. "My name. That's not important. I've come to your palace to visit a friend. An elder of your esteemed palace and I are acquainted." Han Li said calmly, an elder of our palace. May I ask which elder senior is looking for? This junior will immediately inform them for you. Hearing Han Li say this, the man's expression relaxed. He quickly said in an ingratiating tone, Fairy Bai Yao Yi and I have met several times over the years. I wonder if she is in the palace. Han Li said slowly, Oh, so it's Martial Aunt Bai. She hasn't gone out. But it seems she is currently in seclusion. This junior will immediately send a communication talisman to inform our martial aunt. I ask that senior please wait for just a moment. Sha Yuan, hearing Han Li correctly state Bai Yaoyi's name, felt much more at ease. Then, right in front of Han Li, he immediately released a communication talisman. During this time, Han Li remained perfectly calm, standing in his spot without moving an inch. His gaze, however, began to carefully survey the situation in the distance. Seeing this, the young man blinked his eyes, and with a face full of smiles, was about to say something else. But at that very moment, a streak of crimson light shot out from the snowy region behind Han Li. From Han Li and the others, it was only about 100 zhang away. Then, a surprised cry came from within the streak of light. That crimson streak suddenly changed direction and headed straight for Han Li's group. Before the crimson light even arrived, a hearty laugh boomed from within it first. My friend, are you here to visit our palace? May I ask for your esteemed name? Perhaps I, Ren, might know you. The light subsided, revealing a young man with a fair complexion before Han Li. However, his hair was somewhat graying, and his eyes flashed with a sense of deep world weariness. Han Li narrowed his eyes, sizing the man up for a moment. A quick scan with his spiritual sense revealed that this person was also a mid-stage nascent soul cultivator. This came as something of a surprise to him. Before Han Li could speak, Shizi, who was beside him, stepped forward with a look of pleasant surprise. He clasped his hands respectfully and said, Disciple pays his respects. Martial uncle, I trust your journey was successful. My name is Han Li. I had a prior arrangement with Fairy Bai, which is why I've come to visit. Han Li replied calmly, So, your brother Han, when you say Fairy Bai, are you by chance referring to junior sister Bai Yaoyi? The cultivator surnamed Ren paused in thought, then spoke with a flash of realization. That's correct. It is fellow Taoist Bai. Han Li replied with a neutral expression. Well, that's perfect then. I was also looking for junior sister Bai on my return to the palace this time. Why don't I, Ren, lead the way for you, fellow Taoist? The eyes of this cultivator, surnamed Ren, flickered as he made this surprisingly enthusiastic offer. Han Li's expression didn't change, but in his heart, he felt a trace of surprise. But before he could think of how to answer the man, a red light suddenly flashed in the distant void. A streak of brilliant light shot straight towards Sha Yun. It was a voice transmission talisman from Bai Shishi. Sha Yun grabbed the fiery light in his hand. At the same time, he hastily explained. The words on the tip of his tongue were swallowed back down. Then, Sha Yun immersed his consciousness into the fiery light for a moment, and immediately said respectfully to Han Li, Senior Han, Bai Shishi has heard that you have arrived. She is very pleased and has already ended her seclusion. She invites you to meet her at Baining Pavilion. Sha Yun, go about your business. Fellow Taoist Han, please come with me. The Ren cultivator cut in without hesitation. Hearing this, Sha Yun didn't dare to object in the slightest. Han Li's brow furrowed slightly. He couldn't really refuse, so he could only nod and say, Then I'll have to trouble you, brother Ren. Ha ha. Junior sister Bai and I are as close as siblings. Since you're a friend of junior sister Bai, then you are also a friend of mine. This way, fellow Taoist, the Ren cultivator said politely. Then, he transformed into a streak of crimson light, and flew off, leading the way. Han Li followed closely behind without ceremony. Is this your first time visiting our minor expanse palace? Fellow Taoist, the Ren cultivator suddenly asked from within his streak of light. This is indeed my first time coming from the northern underworld island. Your esteemed palace is worthy of being the #1 sect in the northern lands. Its grandeur is truly extraordinary, Han Li said with a chuckle. Hearing Han Li say this, the Ren cultivator's expression also showed a trace of pride. You flatter me, fellow Taoist, but if our palace weren't located in such a remote place, becoming one of the 10 great sects of the righteous and demonic paths wouldn't have been difficult at all. By the way, in recent years, junior sister Bai, has only gone out once, 10 years ago. The rest of the time, I've been in secluded cultivation. Brother Han, you must have met junior sister Bai when she left the palace last time, correct? And for a fellow Taoist with such a profound cultivation, I wonder which sect you hail from. Mu Man said. Although my palace is located in the far north, I myself often travel throughout the Great Jin. I wander all over the place. So, for any fellow Taoist with a bit of a reputation, I usually know a thing or two. With this change in conversation, he began to subtly probe into Han Li's origins. Han Li chuckled lightly. I am not from the Great Jin, so it's not strange that you don't know of me. As for my detailed origins, Fairy Bai actually knows a little about them. He looked back at the man and replied with a faint, non-committal smile. Hey, so that's how it is. I was wondering how the Great Jin could have produced such a high-level cultivator as yourself, Brother Han, who has remained completely unknown until now. The man sensed a hint of displeasure from Han Li. He let out a couple of dry laughs, and didn't ask any more questions. After all, finding out that he wasn't a cultivator from the Great Jin could be considered a gain in itself. Just then, the two of them flew to the entrance of the Ice City. Their glows retracted as they descended from their streaks of light. This was because above the Ice City, a faint, colorful glow shimmered, covering the entire area, except for the mountain in the center. It was clearly an extremely powerful restriction formation, and standing beneath the Ice City, Han Li felt the breathtaking beauty of this city even more keenly. The ice walls, over 100 meters high, didn't seem exceptionally tall, but their extraordinary, crystalline nature was truly mesmerizing. One could be captivated by it without even realizing. What was even more astonishing was that the entire ice wall had constructed from brick-like blocks of ice. Instead, it was translucent through and through, as if a colossal piece of ice had been miraculously carved directly by divine craftsmanship. There wasn't a single crack on the surface. At the city gate, there were more than 10 cultivators dressed in white attire, standing guard there. The highest among them was only at the foundation establishment stage. But what was eye-catching was that with them, there were also several white, ape-like spirit beasts. Their long fur was immaculately snow-white. They were half squatting there, their pair of green eyes flickering with the sinister, cold light. These ape-type spirit beasts were a type of snow ape that specifically grows in extremely cold regions. Although the beast's rank wasn't high, their advantage was that they were exceptionally intelligent and easy to tame. Therefore, many cultivators in the entire northern region raised them. But these snow apes were a bit different. Not only were their bodies much larger than ordinary snow apes, their demonic or had also reached the level of a 4th or 5th grade demonic beast. This was almost equivalent to a foundation establishment cultivator. This made Han Li take a few more glances. It seems the Minor Polar Palace, regarded as the #1 sect in the northern region, must have some unique secret techniques for taming these snow apes. When the cultivators at the city gate saw a cultivator from the Ren sect approaching, they immediately parted to both sides and stood with their hands clasped. They continuously addressed him as Martial Uncle, but the man didn't even nod his head. He just asked a faint question and walked past arrogantly. Although those cultivators found Han Li's appearance unfamiliar, since he was being led by this Martial Uncle, they naturally didn't dare to ask a single question. But just as Han Li walked into the city gate and passed by those few snow apes, an unexpected change occurred. These few demonic beasts suddenly let out a few whimpering sounds. Then, in a state of unusual panic, they continuously retreated. The few disciples from the Minor Palace were startled to see this. They immediately began to berate them with a series of trained commands. But these few snow apes paid them no mind at all. All of them cowered to the side, holding their heads in their arms. Their faces showed an expression of extreme reverence and fear towards Han Li. Upon seeing this, the human form cultivator, after muttering something unintentionally while glancing at Han Li, revealed a strange expression on his face. Fellow Taoist, are you perhaps carrying a high-level ape-type spirit beast? These blood apes may not be of much use, but they are extremely sharp when it comes to sensing their own kind. For them to be this afraid, it must mean your spirit beast is truly extraordinary. An ape-type spirit beast. I do indeed have one. It's just that it isn't very useful. I rarely have a need for it. When Han Li heard this, he naturally understood that these blood apes had sensed the Ti-Hun in his spirit beast pouch, which is why they looked so terrified. He immediately replied in a casual and nonchalant manner, but he had no intention of actually summoning the Ti-Hun. The human form cultivator gave a slight smile and didn't press the matter any further. And so, the two of them walked into the Ice City just like that. The main street in the Ice City was exceptionally straight and wide. The ground was also covered in a thick layer of ice, leading straight from the city gate. Looking from afar, there weren't too many people on the street. Most were low-level cultivators dressed in yellow and white attire. The buildings on both sides of the street were arranged in neat rows. To call it a city, it would be more fitting to call it a castle. Han Li hadn't had a chance to get a good look yet, but the human form cultivator beside him once again transformed into a streak of light, flying from a low altitude straight towards the giant mountain. With a shift in his expression, Han Li followed after him in a streak of light without a word. After a short while, the two of them landed on an ice platform halfway up the giant mountain. From here on out, fellow Han, you'll have to follow me up the mountain on foot, because from this point upwards, it is considered the Inner Palace's territory. Although I am also an Inner Palace elder, but they also have to abide by the palace rules. The cultivator surnamed Ren explained to Han Li with a smile. Han Li nodded slightly, indicating that he understood. The two of them walked up a gold and silver ice staircase from the platform, slowly making their way upwards. The number of disciples from the small polar palace who are qualified to enter the Inner Palace is clearly not very large. They only encountered a few people along the way. When these people saw the cultivator surnamed Ren, they all respectfully came forward to greet him, and towards these Inner Palace disciples, this small polar palace elder was completely different from how he was at the city gate. He smiled at everyone, regardless of their cultivation level. Meanwhile, Han Li paid close attention, and noticed that these Inner Palace cultivators, indeed, regardless of their cultivation level, all possessed outstanding aptitude. Moreover, along the way, with Han Li's expertise in formation arts, he had also discovered at least 3 or 4 places with powerful restrictive spells that even he would find formidable. It seems the small polar palace must have at least one grandmother-level formation master. This made Han Li even more interested in the small polar palace. At the same time, he secretly wondered if he should later find this formation master to exchange some ideas about matters related to formation arts. While he was pondering, the cultivator surnamed Ren led Han Li through a turn here, and a winding path there, eventually ending up on another, much more secluded trail. As a result, after reaching the end, they unexpectedly arrived before an ice wall that was several hundred meters high. Han Li looked at this ice wall, his eyebrows twitched, and a flash of surprise appeared in his eyes. Just at that moment, the cultivator surnamed Ren raised a hand. From his hand flew out a shimmering, fluorescent jade tablet. A silvery radiance unfurled from this tablet, and, in a flash, disappeared into the ice wall without a trace. A moment later, the ice wall trembled silently and began to slowly, from the middle, it split apart, revealing a passage about 6 meters wide. The cultivator surnamed Ren turned his head and explained to Han Li, those palace-like buildings on the mountaintop are actually just for the first-tier disciples of the Inner Palace to cultivate and live in. The truly high-ranking disciples of the Inner Palace actually all reside in the Hanley secret realm behind this wall. This is the true heart of our sect. If it weren't for Brother Han being a good friend of junior sister Bai, we wouldn't dare to bring an outsider in so easily. Han Li heard the man's somewhat flattering words, and a faint smile appeared on his face. But inwardly, he was unimpressed. This so-called Hanley secret realm, I'm afraid many other cultivators know about it. It stopped being a secret long ago, didn't it? Otherwise, why would Bai Yao you tell me to come here directly? And why would this fellow bring me here so easily? Especially since I've never had any dealings with this person. Why, upon first meeting me, does he seem so eager to befriend me? This made Han Li suspicious, and he became much more wary of the man before him. But seeing as the other party was inviting him in, Han Li didn't bother with pleasantries. The two of them immediately walked shoulder to shoulder into the passageway. The passageway wasn't very long, only a little over 100 zhang. When Han Li walked out of the passageway and glanced ahead, he couldn't help but show a surprised expression. Lush and green, with the singing of birds and the fragrance of flowers, this turned out to be a valley completely surrounded by sheer cliffs. Rare flowers and exotic herbs grew everywhere under the bright sun, making it seem like it was spring all year round. The area was several li wide, tightly enclosed by greenish mountain walls, but built into these very cliffs were rows of pavilions and jade terraces, which were exquisitely beautiful, and in the very center of the valley, there were 3 grand halls built from white jade. Sitting right there, taking up almost 1/3 of the valley's area, Han Li gazed at the 3 great halls, but his expression changed slightly. A trace of shock suddenly rose in his heart. Suqia Palace. He felt a profound shock deep inside. These 3 white jade palaces, aside from being different in size, were just like the one that appeared in the chaotic Star Sea. They looked exactly like that Suqia Palace. They were also crafted from flawless, pure white jade, exquisitely beautiful and magnificent, emitting a faint, fluorescent glow. However, compared to that day, compared to the palace that floated in the void, The size of these 3 great halls was only about 1/3 the size of the Sutia Palace. Han Li forcefully suppressed the astonishment in his heart and stared at them once more. He finally confirmed that he had not seen wrong. These 3 great halls definitely had some connection to the Sutia Palace. It was just that the space above the palace doors was completely empty. There were no plaques of any kind on them. Han Li's eye twitched, but he casually said to the Ren cultivator, "So this is the inner sanctum of the Lesser Pole Palace. It truly is a spiritual paradise on earth. However, these 3 great halls, they seem to be quite ancient. I imagine they must have quite a history." "Right. Fellow Taoist, you must be referring to the Su Ling halls. These 3 great halls have existed since the day our palace was founded. It is said that our founding grandmother and a few of his good friends built them using their immense magical power. There are said to be some profound mysteries within them." The Ren cultivator glanced over at the 3 great halls and casually replied, "Su Ling halls." Han Li murmured the name, a strange glint flashing in his eyes.